Welcome to Daily Dreamer, the podcast that provides practical tips and insights to help you reach your biggest dreams. Tune in for daily doses of motivation, inspiration, and actionable advice to turn your aspirations into reality. Whether you're looking to find clarity, boost your confidence, or stay on track with your goals, Daily Dreamer is here to guide you every step of the way.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Looks like we're diving into some Jordan Peterson today. Ideas about building character, finding meaning, that kind of thing. Sent in some really fascinating stuff. It seems like you're interested in, personal growth, resilience, maybe even a bit of adventure.
Absolutely. And it seems like you're not just interested in theory, but really in putting these ideas into practice.
Yeah, for sure. Like Peterson says, just chasing happiness, as our main goal, it seems kind of shallow, not really a sustainable way to live. He says real satisfaction, it comes from something deeper, a life of meaning. What do you think about that?
Yeah, he's not saying happiness is bad. It's more like it's a byproduct, of a life that's well lived, not the end goal itself. He says we find meaning by taking on responsibility and pursuing goals that are actually truly worthwhile.
Okay, so how do we even figure out what those worthwhile goals are?
Well, Peterson uses this great analogy. He wants us to think of life as this epic adventure. He points to the story of Abraham in the Bible, called to leave his comfortable life and go on this journey, all these unknowns. It's a metaphor, really, for how we should approach our own lives.
So not seeking comfort or ease, but pushing ourselves beyond our limits.
Exactly. And to really commit to that kind of adventure, he says, we need to embrace the power of sacrifice.
Sacrifice, huh?
Not just these grand gestures, but those daily choices, move us forward or keep us stuck. He wants us to examine the worst of ourselves, those bad habits, the procrastination, the cynicism. Ask ourselves, what am I willing to give up to become better? A better version of myself.
Wow, that's a powerful way to think about it. It's like we're often our own biggest obstacle.
He gives this great example, this student who was totally resentful, hated his job, as a waiter, but instead of just staying stuck in that resentment, he decided, okay, I'm going to put in the effort, I'm going to excel at this. And believe it or not, he ended up getting 3 promotions in 6 months.
So confronting that resentment, even if it feels unfair, can actually lead to personal growth.
Absolutely. Peterson says, analyze it. Figure out where it's coming from. Is it because you feel taken advantage of? Or is it maybe your own immaturity, lack of effort? Sometimes taking responsibility, even when it's hard, that's the key to moving forward.
Makes sense. This all makes sense. But what about his idea of embracing our shadow? That one's always kind of intrigued me.
Oh, that's an interesting one. It actually comes from a conversation he had with Jocko Willink, the former Navy SEAL.
Wow.
They talked about how important it is to integrate our shadow, those darker aspects of ourselves, like anger or aggression, instead of trying to just suppress them.
So not pretending those parts of us don't exist, but acknowledging them.
More than that, it's about harnessing that energy, directing it towards positive goals. Right. He uses the phrase, a dangerous man who has himself under control. It's about owning your power, but, in a way that serves a greater good, not in a way that harms yourself or others.
That's a powerful image.
Yeah.
We all have that potential for good and bad. And it's about mastering those impulses rather than being controlled by them.
Yeah.
How do we even begin to do that?
Well, Peterson really emphasizes speaking the truth, even when it's difficult, and developing discipline through things like, scheduling. He says, stop doing things that you notice make you weak.
Oh, wow.
And focus on actions that strengthen your character.
Being intentional then with our words, actions, not just drifting.
Exactly. He even suggests starting small, schedule just 10 minutes for a task, build momentum towards, a more disciplined life. Those small changes add up over time. And it all ties back to his main point, really. We find meaning not in this fleeting happiness, but in responsibility. He's challenging us to think about what that means, on a personal level.
What does he even mean by responsibility? Is it just about taking care of ourselves?
It's multifaceted, really. He's talking about responsibility to ourselves, yes, but also to our communities, to the world around us. It's about contributing something positive, leaving things better than we found them.
That's a pretty high bar.
It is. And he doesn't shy away from the challenges. He even talks about this concept of nostalgia for catastrophe, arguing that we shouldn't use, past hardships as excuses for inaction in the present. Even when things are tough, we have a responsibility to move forward, to strive for a better future.
So taking ownership of our lives, even, or maybe especially, when things are tough, seems like a lot to unpack.
It is, and it's challenging us to reconsider what a good life really means. But there's so much more to explore. Specific strategies for building discipline, facing our fears, even the role of spirituality in all of this.
I'm ready to keep going.
Great. Let's take a look at some of those strategies then, and dive deeper into how Peterson suggests we build a life, a life filled with meaning. You mentioned Peterson's thing about speaking the truth, right? Seems like a pretty big deal in his work.
Yeah, it comes up a lot. He really believes that honesty, even when it's tough, uncomfortable, it's essential for building that strong character. And it's not just about being honest with other people, it's about being honest with ourselves, too.
He connects that to the concept of hell, actually.
Oh, wow.
He says that living a lie, suppressing those, difficult truths, it's way worse than any discomfort we feel by facing them head on. Like we're creating our own personal hell by avoiding reality.
That's a powerful image. It makes me think of the thing he says, the reason those terrible situations exist in the world is because you're not good enough. Pretty bold statement. Is he saying we're all responsible for, the state of the world?
Yeah. He's challenging us to recognize that we all have a role to play in making things better. He sees that personal responsibility as the antidote to, all the negativity and apathy we see today. Instead of complaining, he wants us to focus on becoming the best versions of ourselves.
So, by improving ourselves, we can actually, have a ripple effect, make the world a better place.
Exactly. And he even connects that personal growth to the concept of free speech.
Interesting.
Right.
Free speech.
Yeah, he argues that it's essential
because
it forces us to confront different perspectives, challenge our assumptions, refine our understanding of the truth.
Like iron sharpens iron, right? We need those opposing viewpoints to actually help us grow, evolve.
And that ties into his critique of postmodernism, I guess.
Yeah.
He sees it as this kind of intellectual dead end. He says that postmodernism, with all its emphasis on relative truth, it leads to inaction. Because if nothing is really objectively true or valuable, then what's the point of striving for anything?
So he's advocating for going back to a more objective view of reality.
Yeah. A recognition of those universal truths, those timeless values that have guided humanity for centuries. He sees those as essential for building a meaningful life.
It's interesting. He pulls a lot from, religious traditions, particularly Christianity. How does that fit in?
He sees those ancient stories, myths, archetypes as these repositories of wisdom, They can guide us. He's not necessarily saying we have to take them literally.
Right.
But he recognizes those deep psychological truths that they contain. He's looking for those universal patterns, those timeless lessons that go beyond any specific religion or culture.
Like those universal truths we were just talking about.
Exactly. He sees these stories as maps of the human psyche, guides for navigating all the complexities of life.
It makes me think of his discussion of the Passion story, the story of Jesus' crucifixion. He seems to find a lot of meaning in that narrative.
He sees it as this archetypal tragedy, this story that confronts us with, those darkest parts of human nature. But it also offers this glimmer of hope. He suggests that facing those difficult truths head on can actually transform us.
True strength comes from confronting our vulnerability.
Yeah.
And finding a way to move forward despite our limitations.
That connects so well with his idea of embracing responsibility, right? As that path to meaning and purpose. He says taking ownership of our lives, even when we face suffering, adversity, it can actually bring a deeper sense of fulfillment.
Reminds me of that Viktor Frankl quote, "Man's search for meaning is the primary motivation in his life."
Perfect example. Peterson believes that finding a goal, something that gives us direction, it's crucial. And he really emphasizes discipline, self-control, especially resisting those temptations that weaken us.
He even gives us that practical exercise. Stop doing things that you notice make you weak.
Yeah. It's about recognizing those patterns, the ones that lead to regret or shame, and choosing a different path.
Which brings us back to his advice about using a schedule.
Huge advocate for that. He sees it as a way to create a life that aligns with our values, our goals. Taking control of our time and energy instead of letting outside forces or our impulses dictate them.
It's about designing the life that we want to live. not just reacting to whatever comes our way.
He even suggests, think about it like you're designing a schedule for someone you like yourself. Treat ourselves with respect, set ourselves up for success.
So we're the architects of our own lives. And it all starts with that commitment to personal responsibility, facing those tough truths, making hard choices that ultimately lead to growth, transformation.
And he reminds us, it's an ongoing process. It's not about reaching some perfect state of being. It's about constantly striving to be better, aligning ourselves with those higher values that give our lives meaning, purpose.
Sounds like a challenging but ultimately rewarding journey. But how do we actually put all this into practice?
That's the question, isn't it? Peterson actually offers some very specific advice on how to cultivate those habits, the habits of mind and behavior that lead to that meaningful life.
So how do we actually, take all this and make it real? Put Peterson's ideas into practice in our lives. It's one thing to talk about it, but another to actually live it, right?
Right, and he offers a lot of really concrete suggestions, and it all comes down to action, taking action. He really believes in the power of doing, of moving forward, even when, we don't feel ready or certain.
So like taking those baby steps, even if they seem small, insignificant.
Exactly. He talks about setting small goals, achievable goals, and building momentum over time. He compares it to like a snowball rolling downhill.
Okay.
It gathers size and force as it goes.
Oh, I like that. It's like that saying, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
And speaking of journeys, he also emphasizes, embracing adventure, stepping outside those comfort zones. He thinks it's crucial for developing courage, resilience, sense of purpose.
Like that story he tells about the guy, ex-military, I think, who went and became a cowboy in Montana, always pushing his limits, seeking out new challenges.
Perfect example. He sees that thirst for adventure, as a fundamental part of being human. We're wired for growth, exploration, pushing beyond what we know.
It's like we're meant for more than just, comfort and ease. We're meant to strive, achieve, make our mark on the world.
And that brings us back to his idea about finding meaning and responsibility. True fulfillment, he says, it doesn't come from just indulging our desires, but from contributing something positive, making a difference.
So finding something bigger than ourselves, something worth sacrificing for, something to devote our lives to.
And he reminds us it's not about being perfect or achieving some grand, heroic thing. It's about showing up every day and doing the best we can, striving for excellence, in all areas of our lives, even the seemingly mundane things.
Like making the bed, cleaning our room, showing up on time, being honest, treating others with respect. All those little things actually matter.
They do. He believes that by mastering those daily challenges, we develop the strength and resilience to face the bigger ones. Life inevitably throws those our way. It's like building a solid foundation, brick by brick.
Makes sense. Can't handle the small stuff. How can you handle the big stuff, right?
Exactly. He also says to pay attention to our emotions. Notice those things that make us feel weak or ashamed, and then, make a conscious effort to avoid those behaviors going forward.
Being honest with ourselves about our weaknesses and making that commitment to do better. But we don't have to do it alone.
Right. He talks about the importance of, finding mentors, friends, family who can support us, building a community of people who share our values. And finally, he says to cultivate a sense of gratitude, appreciate the good things, even when times are tough.
Shift our focus from what we lack to what we have, from what's wrong to what's right.
Yeah, he's reminding us that even in the darkest times, there's always something to be grateful for, always a reason to hope, always the possibility for growth, transformation.
So if we were to, boil all this down, what's the one key takeaway?
I think it's this. The path to a meaningful life, a fulfilling life, it's paved with responsibility, courage, discipline, and a commitment to truth. It's not easy, but it's worth it.
Sounds like Peterson's challenging us to become the heroes of our own stories.
He is. He's reminding us that we have a choice. Embrace the challenge and strive for that life of meaning and purpose, or shy away from it and settle for, mediocrity and regret. What will you choose?